skyrocketing electricity prices are quickly becoming a major political headache for Republicans, as the cost of electricity climbs significantly faster than overall inflation. This trend threatens to stir public frustration and ignite intense political disputes. According to the latest Consumer Price Index report, electricity prices have surged by 5.5% over the past year, more than double the general inflation rate. This sharp increase is beginning to catch the public's attention, stirring concern and anger among consumers. Mark Wolf, the executive director of the National Energy Assistance Directors Association, highlighted this growing unease. In recent years, the rising prices of various goods have been capturing headlines and sparking public outrage. I believe electric rates are now on the same path, and if this trend continues, it will undoubtedly evolve into a significant political issue. The Trump administration has already labeled this spike in power costs as a political challenge and has sought to assign blame primarily to Democrats and their support for renewable energy sources. Energy Secretary Chris Wright expressed this viewpoint during a recent interview on Fox Business Network's Mornings with Maria. He explained, "Change in the electricity grid happens slowly. Over the past 4 years, numerous complicated projects have been underway affecting how power is delivered." Wright also criticized the energy policies from the Obama-Biden era for the current situation, adding, "Despite that, we're going to bear the brunt of the blame because we are the ones in office now." President Trump has echoed these sentiments, pointing fingers at renewable energy, particularly wind power. This is despite evidence showing that expanding renewable energy supplies typically helps lower electricity costs. On his social platform, Truth Social, he condemned what he called ridiculous, corrupt politician-approved windmills, labeling reliance on wind and solar power as the scam of the century, responsible for soaring electricity bills. On the campaign trail, Trump has vowed to drastically reduce energy prices, promising to cut electricity costs by at least 50% within a year to 18 months under his leadership. On the other hand, Democrats are using the rising electricity prices as a political weapon against Republicans, especially criticizing their efforts to repeal subsidies that support wind and solar energy. Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts warned last month that recent legislative rollbacks would translate into big, ugly energy bills hitting Americans' mailboxes nationwide. Energy experts agree that expanding renewable energy capacity would ultimately bring electricity prices down. However, the effects of the Trump administration's decisions have yet to be fully reflected in consumer rates. Christopher Knittel, an energy professor at MIT, pointed out that retail electricity prices typically adjust with a delay, suggesting the financial impact of Trump's policy shifts might not be evident until after the upcoming midterm elections. Still, some of the current administration's policies, particularly those restricting renewable energy projects, are expected to worsen the problem in the long run. Thomas Rowlands-Rees, who heads North America research at Bloomberg NEF, explained that reducing renewable energy capacity limits the total power supply. When supply shrinks but demand remains steady, prices naturally rise, intensifying the financial burden on consumers. Interestingly, Knittel also noted that several Democratic-led states, which have mandated or incentivized the adoption of renewable energy through policies known as Renewable Portfolio Standards, might partly be responsible for increased prices. These standards aim to encourage clean energy growth, especially with financial support expected from laws like the Inflation Reduction Act, support that is now at risk or withdrawn. This combination of repealed subsidies on one side and mandated renewable energy use on the other presents a complex dynamic contributing to price pressures. Adding to the complexity, Rowlands-Rees highlighted that the Trump administration's push to increase liquefied natural gas (LNG) exports could also drive domestic electricity prices higher. Currently, the U.S. benefits from relatively low natural gas prices compared to the global market, but expanding LNG exports means more gas is sold abroad for higher profits rather than kept domestically. This shift could raise domestic gas prices, pushing up costs for American consumers. The U.S. power grid mainly relies on natural gas, coal, renewables, and nuclear energy. Another rising factor in electricity demand, and thus price, is the rapid expansion of data centers, particularly driven by artificial intelligence and other digital technologies that require substantial power. If these data centers don't operate with dedicated power sources, they draw from the general grid, further increasing overall demand and prices. Both parties have generally supported growth in data center construction, though the Trump administration has especially promoted fast-tracking such developments. However, this surge in demand is just one piece of the puzzle behind rising electricity costs. Climate change is also playing a role. Knittel pointed out that increased wildfire risks, especially on the West Coast, are putting upward pressure on power prices, adding another layer of complexity to the growing cost concerns. Furthermore, Wolf expressed significant worry over the administration's efforts to cut funding for critical financial assistance programs that help low-income families manage heating and cooling expenses. Despite traditionally receiving bipartisan support and expected continued funding from Congress, the Trump administration has proposed eliminating these programs, which could have severe consequences. Wolf summed up the risk bluntly: even if Congress approves funding, that doesn't guarantee the money will be spent to help people. Without reliable access to heating and cooling, people's lives are at stake. This multifaceted situation leaves voters and policymakers grappling with tough questions. How much of the electricity cost surge can be attributed to policy decisions versus market forces like increased demand and climate change? Is blaming one party or energy source fair, or does the truth lie somewhere in the complicated interplay of many factors? And importantly, how can affordable, reliable, and clean power be delivered to Americans without sparking further political rancor? These questions are far from settled. What do you think? Are rising electric bills the inevitable result of shifting energy landscapes, or are political agendas clouding the true causes? Share your thoughts below, and let's get the conversation started.